Good people, karibu sana. Good morning. This is the Morning Cafe. My name is Fred Indemuli. Karibu sana. I am here to take you through your morning with all the big discussions and what's being discussed on the dailies. Yes. This morning, State of the Nation will be having these four gentlemen, Wilson Sosion, David Kiplagat, that's the MP for Soy, Jude Njomo, and Kevin Osido, Executive Director, Governance Watch, for all the big dailies, and we'll be taking a look at some of the headlines shortly. We're also hoping to have a conversation with the Principal Secretary for Culture, the Arts and Heritage, Umi Bashir, as we take a look at the scorecard in as far as culture, the arts and heritage in the 2 years of the William Ruto administration. Being a Thursday today also, Fitness Thursday. Yes, Shadrach Kouma, gym instructor, physique and gyms will be here to take a look at vile tonga misuli na kukunjua magoti ile mekauka. All right, a quick look at the dailies this morning. Billions sink in stalled government projects. That's a big headline on the Star today. As we always say, smart people read the Star. Grab yourself a copy of this one. We'll be back to take a look at more stories, including what's happening down here, where apparently President William Ruto yesterday had a meeting with all the Nyeri elected members of parliament, of course without his deputy Rigathi Gachagua. What exactly does that mean? That's a Star. The big headline on the front page of the People Daily this morning, convict in power. Remember that convict music, yeah. And you have the president there with acting IG of police, Gilbert Masengeli, who has defied enough court orders. There's more to be said about that position of Inspector General of Police now that Parliament has approved the nomination of Douglas Kanja, who's set to be appointed as Inspector General of Police anytime from now. On the Standard, varsities in a fine mess. And you'll realize that most of the dailies this morning focus on matters education. So yes, the Standard goes with this headline on the problems and the crisis facing many, especially the public universities across this country. Matters education still on the front page of the Daily Nation as well, playing with our children's future. Now the Daily Nation has gone beyond what the Standard has done and broken down the various problems facing our education sector beyond just universities. They're talking about secondary schools, the JSS, junior secondary, varsity fees, also the strikes that are on, including the lecturer strike. So matters education on the front page of the Daily Nation. Migomo ya mpenda Ruto, sio mimi nasema, ndio habari kuu kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo. Wanaongea tu ya baadhi ya migomo ya wafanyakazi iliyofanyika nchini mwaka huu, sio tu ya walimu, kuna ya madaktari, kuna ya wauguzi na wengine zaidi. Habari yenyewe kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo. Matters Business, 96 billion shilling SACCO loans reveal that parents' school fees burden. So yes, also matters education. Parents are really struggling to pay school fees, and it is what is featuring on the front page of the Business Daily. They say school fees account for 21% of all loans issued by SACCOs. Let's cross over to Uganda and you'll realize it is the same theme. Matters education on the front page of the Daily Monitor. Government schools fees rip-off. So they say that government schools have their cake and eat it too. A report showing that some government-aided schools are charging as much fees as private schools has triggered calls for government to stop funding them. Now, listen to this. There's a school, St. Mary's Kitende, which is a private school. It charges around 3,300,000 shillings. I know you're shocked. Nabisumsa Girls Secondary School, which is a government school, charges 3 million shillings. Now, this is in the central region of Uganda. This is Ugandan money. Do not be shocked. So 3 million is about 100,000 or 200,000 for a private school, and a government school also charging parents just as much. So that's the front page of the Daily Monitor, Matters Education. It is the same thing on the front page of the New Vision, Matters Education, but a different angle. They say UNEB issues new rules for 2024 exams. One of the rules is that border borders have been banned from transporting exam material. That's the main headline on the front page of the New Vision, Matters Education, Big headline, not just in Kenya, but in Uganda as well. If we cross over the border into Tanzania and we take a look at the Citizen, Matters Business, they focus more on the dollar, how dollar shortage has affected manufacturers. It's interesting that we've never seen anything about schools from Tanzania, but they talk about abductions of children going to school. But Matters Education rarely feature on the front pages of the papers in Tanzania. So dollar shortage has affected manufacturers in Tanzania. That's a big story there on the front page of the Citizen. Finally, kwa gazeti la Mwananchi, siri mauaji ya familia yatikisa jiji la Dodoma. Ndani ya wiki tatu watu 6 wameuawa kinyama. Hofu ya tanda kwa wananchi, wadau wafunguka kiini. RPC yaeleza mikakati iliyopo. Ni mji wa Dodoma, mikasa ya uwaji ya watu kadhaa, na hiyo kesi inaendelea. Habari tu moja pale kwenye ukurasa wa mbele, vidokezo zaidi kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Mwananchi. Kaburi la mjukuu lafukuliwa, jeneza na mwili vyateketezwa. Kwingineko, sekta binafsi sasa yaitwa kuikwamua TEMESA, na watu 73 wapenya usaili Chadema. Boni Yai aishikiliwa na polisi, masuala ya siasa pale. So gazeti la Mwananchi. So these are the pieces of headlines and news that we are receiving this morning across the region. We'll be back to take a look at the front pages and the inside pages of our local dailies. Yes, Matters Education, big news on most of the dailies today, but there is also that controversy about the standoff between the police IG, the acting police IG, and the judiciary, which makes it to the front page as well. And this one, billions sink in stalled government projects across Kenya. That's the front page of the Star this morning. Let's take a look at the traffic, weather situation. We'll take a look at traffic later on at around 6:30 once it has built properly. And we start off with the major cities in Kenya. We start off with Nakuru, which is one of the major 5 major cities we have. And in Nakuru this morning, it is a bit cloudy and quite chilly, 15 degrees centigrade Celsius as we speak, but it promises to be quite a sunny morning up until midday, when we start getting some drizzle and thunderstorms in the afternoon. Highs of 26 degrees in Nakuru, but do expect some rain in the early afternoon between midday and 5 p.m. So kama uko Nakuru, beba mwavuli, but you can enjoy some sunny intervals in the morning. The other city is down south at the coast, 24 degrees Celsius as we speak, but it feels like 26 degrees Celsius. There's proper holiday weather. Promises to be a very sunny day throughout. Very low chances even of cloud cover. It's a bit chilly this morning, 24. According to them, hiyo ni baridi. Kwetu probably it will be the high. But in Mombasa today, promises to get as high as hot as 28 degrees Celsius by a late afternoon, and that's the kind of weather to expect in Mombasa, proper holiday weather. Let's take a look at the other city, and that's Eldoret. In Eldoret, it's quite chilly this morning, 12 degrees Celsius. Promises to be a bit sunny between 7 a.m. and 9, then a bit drizzly for the better part of the morning. A mixed weather today in Eldoret because promises to possibility of thunderstorms later in the evening. So yes, highs of 24 degrees Celsius, but it's mixed. Jua inawaka, inatoka kidogo, cloud cover, kunanyesha kidogo, unarudi jua tena inawaka. So beba t-shirt na beba mavuli na jacket na mboshori pia ukitaka. In Moyale, let's take a look at Moyale. That's far north of the country. It's 19 degrees Celsius, but it feels like 24, and that variance is quite huge. Why would it feel like 24 if it's actually 19 degrees Celsius? It promises to be quite a hot day, highs of 29 degrees Celsius, a bit of cloud cover, but doesn't change the temperatures, mostly sunny throughout the day. And this one, I cannot necessarily call it holiday weather, but it is hot nonetheless. And finally, City in the Sun. 14 degrees Celsius in Nairobi this morning, feels like 15 degrees, but promises to be quite sunny throughout the day up until 2 p.m. At 3 p.m. Possibility of some showers or some drizzle. Highs of 26 degrees, which is a bit comfortable for Nairobi. Yes, warm weather has returned comfortably. So you can get to enjoy some comfortable weather today if you are in Nairobi. Now, before we come back to take a look at the dailies, let's take a look at Today in History.
Today in History, 19th September 1985. Mexico City was struck by a devastating earthquake that caused extensive damage and loss of life. The disaster prompted significant changes in earthquake preparedness and building codes in Mexico.
Naona mtu ananiuliza hapa mboshori ni nini? Kama hujui mboshori wewe huishi Kenya. Let's come back and take a look at the local dailies. All right, and we do have the Star this morning. Billions sink in stalled government projects. That's the front page of this paper. That's the spot people read. They say that spread across the country, they are yet to return any value for money to the taxpayer. This is what Morara Kaso has. They say she was lucky, but the incident left her and classmates shaken. This is a grade 6 pupil who was in class attending a math lesson on Tuesday at a school in Rongai, Kajiado, when a bullet suddenly hit her left hand. The bullet tore through the roof and disrupted the lesson. This is according to a teacher. The story is on page 3 of the Star. And sentence actually takes effect. He may no longer be the acting Inspector General of Police. By then, the newly appointed or the newly nominated IG, that's Douglas Kanja, may have been appointed officially. So what happens to Gilbert Masengeli? That is a big story there, and we wait to see. I had seen a very interesting commentary on this paper about a comparison, yes, on page 17 of the Star. They talk about, it's a comparison between President Trump and President William Ruto. Mangoes, oranges. Anyway, Trump and Ruto, the similarities. That's a commentary on page 17 of the Star. You can grab yourself a copy. Let's now take a look at the next paper, and this is the People Daily. Convict in power. Yes, this discussion about the standoff between the acting IG of police, Gilbert Masengeli, and the judiciary still getting big headlines. And they say impunity. Judges decline to suspend Masengeli jail sentence, even as he continues to enjoy the company of top state officials, including the president, in that picture below there, and attending government functions. But what will happen immediately he leaves office as acting IG? His sentence still stands. The other headlines on the front page of the People Daily: learning paralyzed as lecturers begin strike. Yes, the universities strike, and matters education still getting a lot of coverage on the front pages. Ogamba under fire over funding model. Matters education, this is a CS for education as well. So yes, education basically is the biggest discussion today across all papers. Uproar: a student assaulted by police goes under the knife. Now, you may have come across this video of a student being harassed by police at the Multimedia University, and there was one police officer who actually threw tear gas canister right next to the head of the student. He's undergoing surgery on his leg. He was injured during that incident. That story is on page 3 of the People Daily. On the Standard, still matters education getting prominence. Varsities in a fine mess. It focuses on the universities, and they talk about towers of crisis. Public universities have been limping from crisis to crisis, from insolvency to student funding crisis, said to be discriminatory, and now a strike by its workers over their remuneration. The institution's woes are hitting rock bottom. What must now be done to save the citadels of knowledge? It is a special report on pages 4 and 5 of this paper. Will this man end impunity? And for the very first time, we have the picture of the man who's supposed to take over as the new Inspector General of Police. That is Douglas Kanja Kirocho. He clears the vetting hurdle in Parliament to await swearing in as the new Inspector General of Police at a time when the service is under scrutiny for open impunity by its bosses, puzzle of enforced disappearances, police brutality, and brazen abductions. Will Kanja chart a new way forward away from his predecessor's playbook? Douglas Kanja there, the nominee for Inspector General of Police. Other quick highlights: a fresh test for Ruto's IMF pushes for new tax policies. Reorganized government faces a fresh fiscal and political test after IMF urged administration to develop new policies to unlock billions in loans. Stories on page 19. We are still not out of the woods yet. Finance Bill of 2024 may have been rejected in totality, but there are indications that some of the provisions in that bill could make a comeback as the government tries to plug the gap left in as far as revenue collection by KRA. Wetangula's party won't fall for UDA. That's a Ford Kenya party. Probably people who have been in politics for quite a while may be happy because of this headline. UDA has already agreed to dissolve and join UDA. And ANC, Musalia Mudavadi's ANC, has agreed to dissolve and join UDA. Wetangula has said no. Elsewhere, juvenile gangs terrorize Kwale and Mombasa, and lip service as politics back in church. Gen Z mko wapi? Sikiza hii. Wanasiasa washarudi kwa pulpit na wanapiga kelele kama kawaida. Mutadu. Other quick highlights on the top strip of the Standard this morning. New safety rules to lock farmers out of the market, and exploding devices kill 15 in Lebanon. The Standard today also gives a tribute on page 3 to founder of the mushrooms, Teddy Kalanda, who died at the age of 72. If you open page 3 of the Standard, the mushrooms founder member, Teddy Kalanda Harrison, passed away. And his brother, John Katana, says, "This is the saddest moment to us as a family, but it pleases Almighty God to take him at this time, since he's the one who gives and takes away." That's page 3. Also, someone else matters transitioning as far as entertainment industry is concerned. On page 3 of the Standard, they talk about Tito, member of the Jackson 5, passes away at the age of 70. This is the elder brother to the late Michael Jackson. He was a member of the Jackson 5. He also passed away last week. And on the back page, Arsenal focus on Atalanta ahead of Man City showdown. Jorginho has challenged Arsenal to use their Champions League opener against Atalanta today as a springboard to success in their crucial clash with Manchester City at the weekend. So yes, more Champions League matches coming up today. Monaco-Barcelona is one of the big games. Atletico, RB Leipzig, and Brest versus SK Sturm Graz at 10 p.m. That game between Atalanta and Arsenal also taking place at 10 p.m. tonight. Lovers of Champions League, something to look forward to. Let's move on and take a look at the Daily Nation. Playing with our children's future still matters education. They say education in crisis. 2 major pay strikes by teaching staff and a suspended one by varsity students over fees, all in less than 1 month, paint the picture of a sector in turmoil. Add to this the chaotic transition to junior school under the CBC system and the tragic fire incidents in our institutions. Who'll end this mess, they ask, and bring sanity to our schools? And they've done the same as the Standard has. It's a special report on pages 6 and 7 of this paper. So matters education still receiving a lot of attention on our dailies this morning. The other story, Adani fights off cases in dispute over JKIA lease. And Kanja all set to be named police boss after MP's nod. But I still ask the question, so what happens to Gilbert Masengeli once he stops acting as Inspector General? Remember, he has already been sentenced to 6 months in prison. The Court of Appeal refused to suspend that sentence, so it still stands. What will happen if at all, let's say, Douglas Kanja is sworn in as Inspector General of Police today, and the sentence against Masengeli is supposed to kick off tomorrow? Interesting days. There's an interesting photo on the front page of the Daily Nation there of the president in training kits. Junior starlets off to World Cup, and yes, President William Ruto there alongside the sports CS and FKF boss Nick Mwendwa chatting with members of the junior starlets football team yesterday at State House, Nairobi. The team will fly to Spain today for training ahead of the next month's FIFA Under-17 Women's World Cup in the Dominican Republic. Pale juu kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Daily Nation, how Raila used cabinet deal to settle ODM rows, and Koki Muli's 4th bid for IEBC job faces headwinds. Yes, matters police and the new police IG is what features on the back page of this paper. Aha, interesting. President William Ruto yesterday called for a truce in the ongoing police-judiciary feud. It's on the back page. Whether or not they will listen to him remains to be seen. That's the Daily Nation today. Gazeti nyingine, Taifa Leo, wanasema migomo ya mpenda Ruto. Sio mimi nimesema, gazeti imesema hivyo. Ni migomo inamtafuta tu. Mwaka huu tu wafanyakazi katika anga sekta 7 wameshiriki migomo kupigania maslahi. Baadhi ya migomo ya wafanyakazi iliyofanyika nchini mwaka huu ni waadhiri na wafanyakazi wengine wa vyuo vikuu, wanafunzi wa vyuo vikuu, wafanyakazi wa viwanja vya ndege, walimu wa sekondari, walimu wa shule za msingi wa KNUT, watumishi wa umma walifutia mgomo wao katika dakika za mwisho. Wafanyikazi wa kaunti zote, kwingineko madaktari walishiriki mgomo wa wauguzi na matabibu pia ulifanyika mwezi Machi. Kina wanasema hapa ni migomo inampenda Ruto. Masuala ya siasa, vidokezo zaidi kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo, namna Raila alivyotuliza boli ODM, na kwingineko Kanja apata kibali kwa Inspector Generali wa polisi. Rais atazamiwa kumtawaza mkuu wa polisi baada ya bunge kumuidhinisha. Kwingineko majangili wavaa sare za polisi. Hali hiyo yaibua maswali kuhusu wanavyopata magwanda haya. Habari hii kwenye ukurasa wa mbele, ukurasa wa 4. Masuala ya spoti yako pale juu kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo. Zamu ya Arsenal, Barca kutesa katika UEFA. Gunners wazuru Atalanta, Monaco wakialika Barca, PSG na Girona. Kurasa wa 20 kwenye gazeti hili la Taifa Leo. Kwenye masuala ya biashara, sema 96 billion shilling SACCO loans reveal parents' school fees burden. Still on education, borrowing for fees is only second to land and house purchase. So this is perhaps the biggest spend for parents when they go for SACCO loans. It is either they're buying a house, land, but mostly school fees. So school fees accounts for 21% of loans issued by SACCOs. Kenyans tapped 96.3 billion shilling loans from savings and credit cooperative SACCOs to pay school fees and related expenses last year, underlining the growing burden of education in private institutions amid falling standards in cheaper public schools. Still on education, the photo they've used on the front page of the Business Daily today is that of striking lecturers University Academic Staff Union and Kenya University Staff Union, Moi University chapter officials lead members in launching the strike by staff at public universities yesterday in Eldoret. So matters education dominating the front pages this morning. How Adani's JKI proposal was cleared in 17 days also features on the front page of the Business Daily. We continue getting shocked about how Adani managed to do all these things so comfortably within days. In one of the stories it says they actually drafted the tender documents within a day, less than 24 hours. If you've ever drafted tender documents, you know what I mean. Well, that's the Business Daily this morning, and those are the local headlines. Let's take a look at the cartoons tuone wanasema nini leo. And all right, we start off with a cartoon on the Daily Nation, and it talks about mambo ya Mrima. Finally ni kama waligusa Mrima na waliambiwa musiguse Mrima. But it would appear there are two people who are sparring. They're already fixing their arms, ready for a fight. On one side, we do have the deputy president with that now famous or infamous crown ya Mrima. The Mrima iko hapo katikati. So they're fighting via the microphones. On this other side, the gloves are off. This one is the leader of majority. Instead of letting the other person who's supposed to be the kingpin to do the fighting, he is the one doing the fighting on behalf of this gentleman, who's curiously very quiet, but he's wearing the crown ya Mrima. That's Kithure Kindiki. That's the cartoon on the Daily Nation. Matters politics of Mount Kenya. On the Star, they talk about the 48 laws of power. Apparently, keep thy deputy in check is among the 48 laws of power now. Kenyan variant. It's a playbook, and he's seen what exactly. He is reading from the playbook of his predecessor, President Uhuru Kenyatta. We're talking about William Ruto now. So the Kenyan variant of the 48 laws of power, there's the inclusion of keep thy deputy in check. It also applies to what's happening at the county level. You have to keep your deputy in check. Ndio mambo iendelee sawa sawa. On the People Daily, they steer clear of Mount Kenya politics. They talk about the control of budgets, Nyakango, and she has her head inside the mouth of a crocodile that has a lot of money inside, and this crocodile represents corrupt counties. So she's been revealing a lot of the corruption that's happening at the county level. And then she says the dangers of exposing how it eats. Yes, now the danger is that you have to put your head inside the mouth of the crocodile, and that could have its own implications as well. So these are just some of the cartoons. Unfortunately, we did not manage to put up the cartoon on the Standard, but I can explain it for you because it was also very interesting. Yes. The cartoon on the page 14 of the Standard talks about the blatant disregard of court orders and habeas corpus by the Kenya Kwanza administration. And this Kenya Kwanza is just saying mutadu. We can defy court orders, mutadu. Yes. And the commentator says, sisi ndio tuko. Yes. Sisi ndio tuko. We don't listen to courts. Hata waseme nini, mutadu. All right. So these are just some of the topics we'll be discussing and looking at with my panelists after the break. Allow me to reintroduce them as we take a break. Nakumbali. Yes, Wilson Sosion, former SGK NUT, David Kiplagat, MP Soi, Jude Njomo, former MP Kiambu, and Kevin Osido, Executive Director, Governance Watch. They will be in studio this morning to help us look at the big headlines. After that, we'll be having the Principal Secretary for Culture, the Arts and Heritage, Umi Bashir, as we take a look at the scorecard in as far as culture, the arts and heritage in the first 2 years of William Ruto's administration. Later on at 9, it is Fitness Thursday with gym instructor Shadrach Oma. Do stand by for that and a lot more. And remember, you can be part of all these conversations through our social media pages on X at TV47 News and on Facebook, TV47 Kenya. You can tag me on X at Fred Indimuli is my Twitter handle. That and a lot more after the break. You're watching Morning Cafe.
Hey there, friends! Welcome to Kids on the Block, where fun and imagination come alive. We dive into magical world filled with exciting adventures and awesome friends.
What position were you in?
I was number 2.
What position were you?
Number 1.
He decided to cross the bridge by his house and look for food on the other side.
We're going to do half cup of chocolate chips, and the other one, we're going to do half cup of the blueberries.
So, grab your imagination hats and get ready to explore with us. Join us every Saturday at 9 a.m. for new friends, amazing stories, and tons of laughter.
Join us as we explore the journeys of those who defy the odds and break barriers. We dive deep into the stories of triumph.
Sometimes when parenting a child with a special need or whatever disability, family life becomes a bit complicated and you may end up raising the child on your own.
Here, we inspire.
I have a farm which one we showcase with other dyslexic youths and autism, how to farm.
Motivate.
It's never easy, but what we do, the best thing is to work with another parent who has an elder child than yours.
And break through the barriers one story at a time. Push your boundaries beyond the limit. Saturdays at 8 p.m. The Grind, where business meets brilliance. It's not just about the ideas.
I was working as a shampoo boy. I used to wash clients' hair on the sink.
It's about making them happen. From big wins.
In primary school, when we would be asked what people want to be, I was categorical that I want to be a nurse.
To hard lessons.
The consoles change, the gaming equipment keep changing.
We cover it all. Tune in to The Grind, where every episode is packed with insights.
The person who is serving customers, always be a customer-centric.
Strategies.
When you pay attention to detail, you get luxury items.
And stories to fuel your ambition. Don't just dream it, grind it. Mondays at 7:30 p.m.
Jiunge nasi tunapoangazia safari za viongozi bora. Kutoka kwa ushindi mkubwa hadi masomo magumu.
Wakati wetu kwamba wasichana si wa kusoma, ni wa kuolewa, ng'ombe ipatikane, wazazi wakuwa watajiri.
Tunashughulikia yote.
I wish I were a better investor.
My parents taught me how to look for things for myself.
Tazama Mfahamu Kiongozi, ambapo kila kipindi kimejaa maarifa, mikakati na hadithi za kukuza azma yako.
For me to succeed, I have to fight.
Kila Alhamisi saa 1:30.
Remember, you can keep tracking and following this conversation online on X at TV47 News. You can also contribute to what we'll be discussing with my panelists on the State of the Nation. Yes, indeed, this is the State of the Nation Morning Cafe at TV47. My name is Freddie Ndimuli. The big headlines today, as I said before, a lot of focus on matters education, playing with our children's future, and they talk about an education crisis. That's a Daily Nation. On the Standard, the big headline is about universities in a fine mess. It is also there on the front page of the People Daily, where they talk about the university's lecturers' strike, as well as a strike by other workers at different universities. And yes, it is indeed the big discussion. Even in Uganda, they're talking about school fees and other issues. Back home, even on the front page of the Business Daily, they're talking about SACCO loans, but in relation to school fees, where they say that up to 21% of loans issued by SACCOs, most of them go to school fees. 96 billion shillings SACCO loans reveal parents' school fees burden. So matters education getting a lot of prominence on the front pages today. We'll be looking at this and the other issues, including what's happening with the police service, with the standoff between the acting IG of police and the judiciary. I'd introduced my panelists earlier, but on set already is Kevin Osido, Executive Director, County Watch. Good morning, karibu sana.
Good morning to you, Fred, and asante kwa mwaliko.
Yes, karibu. And as we even wait for your colleagues to join you, the biggest discussion this week has been about what's happening between the police IG, the acting police IG, and the judiciary. The blatant disregard of court orders. And one wonders, this is 2024. We thought we had really moved on from such.
Yeah.
When we see this from the highest ranking police officer, currently as we speak, that could change in the next few days, but he is a highest ranking police officer currently. When we see blatant disregard of court orders from such an officer, what does it imply for this country?
Thank you so much, Fred. It purely implies that we probably have not made a lot of progress in terms of enhancing the spirit of constitutionalism and institutional responsibility in some of the people that we provide opportunities to serve on behalf of Kenyans. And indeed brings to the question around concerns that have really been going on since, I think, 2012 around the national police reforms, issues around accountability, transparency, responsibility, and even individual responsibilities for those who have institutions. Remember that part of the concerns as to why Bwana Masengeli is being asked to appear is really because Kenyans have been abducted and they cannot be produced in court. It goes further to indicate that the manner in which the police engage with the citizens during the protests is not something that really Kenyans expected. Now, it therefore is incumbent upon institutions to begin to ask themselves, how can we be able to engage amicably and harmoniously, especially with regards to building citizen trust and confidence that, one, the Constitution of Kenya 2010 is being lived and is actually a living document that is making a lot of progress, and that, two, citizens can really have confidence in institutions. And I think that part of what we have seen happening in the most recent past is given some form of public opinion that has been picked by various institutions of opinion polling to be able to determine public trust and confidence in institutions. And the judiciary has been one of those institutions that has been really propped to be one that Kenyans still have confidence in. Now, for somebody at the level of the acting Inspector General of Police to really defy court orders brings to the fore respect to institutions and largely how we expect them now to implement and live the Constitution of Kenya, and that therefore brings in a lot of issues. I don't think there would have been a problem for Bwana Masengeli to just show up and say, here I am. As at the time these things were happening, it is public knowledge that he was not the Inspector General of Police and that he's acting. Why he is skipping these court orders, I think really dents his personal image before the public. And who knows, probably God might have bigger things for him tomorrow, other than being the Inspector General of Police, because now we at least have a name that we expect to be named and to be given that position. But I think it's not worked very well for the acting Inspector General of Police, and that, in my view, Fred, also dents how probably the police and the public will engage out there. Imagine a scenario where a citizen goes to the police station to report a case and is told, hata kama mkubwa wetu pia may defy court orders. Jay, who do you think you are?
Exactly.
And I think it's a bad attitude that some public servants are portraying to the public.
And the cartoon on the Standard simply reflects that kind of attitude that the KK administration has with this blatant disregard of court orders, and this Kenya Kwanza administration, or the caricature of it says mutadu. Yes, sisi ndio tuko. You mentioned the fact that yes, on the front page of the Standard, there's a new nominee. Douglas Kanja has finally been approved by the National Assembly for appointment as Inspector General of Police. So he's just awaiting that moment when the president will actually make that appointment, meaning that the person at the helm of the police service is set to change.
Yeah.
A lot is also happening. Curiously, yesterday, President William Ruto presided over the launch of the strategic framework for the implementation of reforms in the National Police Service, Kenya Prison Service, and the National Youth Service yesterday. What that means, we just have to wait and see. Allow me to welcome onto the set Jude Njomo, former MP Kiambu constituency. Now, a lot, Bwana Njomo, has been happening around the police service. Just recently, saw another policeman at Multimedia University trying to contain some disruption by students there and throwing a tear gas canister directly next to the head of a student who had been injured. And we are talking about police reforms. We're coming from a position where a lot of criticism has gone towards the police service. Whoever was Inspector General of Police had to be let go of during that time. We've seen an acting Inspector General of Police who has disregarded 7 orders of the court. Now we're getting a new one. And you wonder, isn't this confusion now, especially in the running of our police service?
They say the fish rots from the head. Thanks very much for having me here this morning. And I think I'll start by saying what is happening within the police force is really very discouraging. And it is not what we expected from the police. Apart from what you have said, yes, we saw what happened at the Multimedia University. It was very, very sad because those people did not behave like human beings. The guy had broken his leg and they continued, you know, punishing him, kicking him, and the worst thing was to throw a tear gas canister at him. And we saw what happened to one of the policemen who had a canister exploding in his hands. I think he lost his hands.
Yes, he did.
He lost his hands. So did they want to kill him or what? If you remember, also there was a demonstration yesterday by some, I don't know whether it was yesterday or the day before yesterday, by some tea farmers about the prices of tea. And one person died. So in every demonstration that happens in Kenya, and we are in a country where demonstration is allowed by our constitution. It is a constitutional right. Every demonstration we are having people die. The farmers were not destroying anything. They were just expressing themselves to the board of directors of that particular tea factory, saying, no, the prices that we are getting are wrong. And one person was killed by our, farmers who are not armed. Why were they opening fire at them? So we have seen that the acting Inspector General have defied court orders. And you remember last week when we were talking here, we said one of the things that is happening in country is that we have a mtadu attitude, and that is exactly what has been portrayed here in the cartoon. He knows that there is nobody who can arrest him. In fact, the judge asked him to present himself to the nearest prison because he knows nobody can go to arrest him because he's the boss of the people who go to arrest. But what he's forgetting is he will not be the Inspector General Milele. He will have to go out at one time, and law will catch up with him. He has protection now from the powers that be, but those powers that be will not be there forever. I know he's going to have a very hard time. I know he doesn't know what he's going to tell the court because it is his people under him who went and took these young people who were abducted, and now they are nowhere to be seen. We do not know whether they are the ones who were collected from Kware. We do not know whether they are still alive. And maybe he has no answers for us. And maybe that is why he's avoiding to go to court. But I think it is their responsibility, because if they took those young people from their homes or from wherever they were arrested from or were abducted from, they have a responsibility of telling us where are they now.
Okay.
Because they have their people, and their people would like to know where they are.
Yes, Bonosido.
Yeah, Fred, I just wanted to make an addition to this statement. And you see, the constitution that we are talking about is one progressive one that has also given a lot of power and strength to various institutions. Remember that before the police are recruited, they go through, rather are given the responsibility to act. They go through a recruitment process, which brings to the fore the role of the National Police Service Commission. Why are Kenyans not hearing that bold institution's voice on these issues? Over time and again, there is another institution called the Ipoa, the Independent Policing Oversight Authority. Why are we not seeing Ipoa coming out so strongly to be able to make its voice count on this issue? We have another commission called the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. Kenyans are asking, human rights have been violated. Why can't we see these institutions coming out so strongly to be able to support? Remember that at the court, we saw a lot of civil society organizations being at the forefront to be speaking on behalf of the citizens. There are institutions that need to demand that the National Police Service, and particularly the individuals that have been named in some of these issues, take individual and personal responsibility. And I think that the highest bit of this that we ever went to was when we saw a one-time Inspector General of Police being taken to the ICC. Kenyans are not blind to some of these atrocities that have been meted. And we're not saying that all police officers are rogue. There are some individual police officers. Now, for instance, Bwana Masengeli, who is acting. It is important that Kenyans are given feedback, especially out of what is happening. There are reports that we are continuously being told that have been picked. We need to see those reports and feedback being given to Kenyans so that at least we can say that as we commemorated the 14 years of the Constitution just the other day, and we are still continuing in 2024, the Constitution is living some of the dreams that Kenyans had expected from that Constitution. Thank you, Fred.
Police reforms have continued for a long time, and one would have expected that by now probably would be getting things right, especially with the new Constitution that Bonosido mentions. Now we have this task force led by the former Chief Justice David Maraga that handed over its report and recommendations which were being the strategic framework on the implementation was being launched by the president yesterday. But it would appear things are getting worse. The biggest gap in what Kenyans are wondering is, so what is a remedy to this kind of impunity when the courts cannot even contain impunity within the police service? Now, on the front page of the Standard, they're asking, is this the man to end this impunity? Douglas Kanja, the nominee for Inspector General of Police. But he will also face the same challenges. It would appear there's a disconnect, that probably the institutions that should hold to account the police service are not as effective. What is your assessment, Bob?
The institution you're talking about is the Police Oversight Authority, the Ipoa. And I think Ipoa needs to pull up its socks. Because they are the ones who are our eyes as far as police are concerned. Because nobody else will be able to tackle the police because of the powers that they have. But Ipoa has been given the authority by our constitution to oversight the police. But maybe we are also expecting too much from the police. I remember in 2010, just before when we were campaigning for the new constitution, one of the selling points was that we are going to have a reformed police force, police service. By then it was a force, now it is going to be a service, such that when they are coming to arrest you, they will be telling you, nakuomba nikushike. Maybe we are expecting too much. But as far as obeying the law is concerned, the police service is the one which is supposed to ensure that if I am breaking the law, then I am put to where I belong. I'm taken to a court of law. So if the police are not obeying the law, what do they expect us to do as Mwananchi? Because I will be asked to go to court, I will say, no, if the police are not going, why should I go to court? I think we need a serious, very serious reform within the police. I hope this report that has been done by the Maraga, is it a committee or a commission? Task force. I hope they are going to act on it rather than putting it on a library somewhere to decorate a bookshelf.
Yes. Now we are set to have a new Inspector General of Police, Douglas Kanja, who could be appointed, sworn into office anytime from today. Do you see any... Are you hopeful that there could be a positive change in as far as workings of the police service?
It's quite interesting that when the members of parliament, particularly National Assembly, were vetting Bwana Kanja, part of their biggest concerns were on corruption. And they really urged him to ensure that he fights the corruption in the police service. And the question that begs, Fred, is that we have had this conversation over and over again, but there is, I don't think I remember any single corruption case by a police officer that has been successfully adjudicated, and any of them that is serving any jail terms. Now, what we would probably expect is that Bwana Kanja will really bolster public trust and confidence in the police, because as Mheshimiwa says, Kenyans had hoped that now we are going to move from a force, and you see they were looking at it from the force, particularly that was being meted on the citizens by the police. You know, the physical hardware force, not necessarily the expectations of the office. And so Kenyans said, let's move from this force and get you into our service. But if you were to audit the police service, really, there are very few instances where the police has served the citizens. And because many of the reports, even outside here, you walk out and you ask Kenyans, so what is your view about the police? And they will tell you, hey, watu hawatupendi. It is the expectation of Kenyans that now the incoming Inspector General of Police will help citizens to see the police service from a service perspective and not as their enemies. You know, there is a badge that the police wear called utumishi kwa wote. And so you ask yourself, how would this be service to all if most Kenyans cannot see the service that they expect from the police? So it is my prayer and trust that the incoming Inspector General of Police will also take to his desk, you know, part of what is happening with the acting Inspector General, and that he'll be able to give back to Kenyans certain reports and indicate that as I come into office, this is what will ensure that happens to Bwana Masengeli, because either he does something or not, and that will continue to dent that public trust and confidence that we are looking forward to. And Fred, as I finish on this, you realize that two institutions among several others that really give justice and its access to Kenyans is the judiciary and really the police. And if Kenyans do not see how the police or some of these institutions therefore respect the judiciary, it still goes back to asking the questions, then who will respect the law? Because when people are aggrieved and they feel that they lack justice, it is the courts that they expect to go to get that justice. And the people who stand at the fore of the court in terms of implementing that justice is indeed the police. So if the police also cannot respect court orders and what the court is recommending and actually asking to be done, then many questions still continue to limbo, which I trust that the incoming Inspector General of Police will be able to really deal with. I don't think that the President did us justice, especially at the apex of the launch of his report, because as the man who really stands to represent Kenyans in all quarters, is Kenya's ambassador number one and citizen number one. He needed to have spoken despite, of course, the spirit of respect to independent institutions, that the judiciary is the judiciary and the executive is the executive. But at least the police service falls under the office of the President through the Ministry of Interior and coordination of national government. He should have made his voice really sound around the issues of impunity that the acting Inspector General of Police is fostering.
Indeed, the President, I just need to clarify that the President actually said something. It's on the back page of the Daily Nation. He called for a truce in the ongoing police-judiciary feud. He did not really say there will be no impunity, but he just said you can work better together. Yes, but Njomo.
If you ask a Strand 3 child to draw corruption today, he or she will draw a policeman, a traffic policeman, receiving some bribe along the road. This has continued for a long time. And I think even the police itself if it wanted to clean itself, the senior guys would be able to clean up what the junior guys, the junior officers are doing. But I think there's a whole chain. Even those on top benefit from what is happening at the bottom. And that is why it becomes very, very difficult to wipe up corruption. If you remember, there was a what do you call it? This anti-corruption authority, EACC, has a major role to play in cleaning up the police service. We have seen them in several instances when they lay traps and ambush policemen as they are doing the dirty work along the road, and they have been successful. But they only do it once or twice an year, just for our eyes. They in fact go there with cameras and all that. This is what they should be doing every day if they wanted to clean up. We had, you remember, in Muthaiga police station some times back, there was a guy who was arrested for murder he did in America. And he walked out of prison. He walked out of the cell. That's the kind of service that we are getting. If you were in trouble today, many people would not go to get a solution from a police station, because it's like you are inviting problem. Because when you involve police to solve your problem, it's you must have a good wallet, you know. So those are some of the things that we need.
Do you think we are putting too much expectation on the nominee for police IG, Douglas Kanja?
Douglas Kanja is an experienced policeman. He's going to the top because he has come along for a long time. So he is part of a force, a part of a service he's been working for a long time. If he were to change, he would have changed from where he is coming from. I don't have much hope of so much change from the new police commissioner, because he has been in that system for a long time. We need a mwosho mpya in the police service for us to have a total cleanup in that particular department.
Wow.
We may have to get. You remember there was one time, and he has mentioned about a police officer who went to KICC. That gentleman had come from the military, because they were trying to, you know, change, to bring a complete...
Change the culture.
To change that culture. And I think that is the kind of thing we also need. Bring somebody who has not grown up in the system so that he can come with new ideas.
My dear Fred, if you allow me, there is normally something done by the police serving, they're called Police Sector Working Group. Is a working group that brings together civil society organizations and also the police serving institutions. And they normally provide annual awards to police servicemen and women who are doing extraordinary work out there. There is need for us to boost that kind of a process, and that even as we also award the best serving policemen and police women, we also need to look at the worst serving, and so that we also attach this to a certain aspect of naming and shaming that really individuals can carry with themselves wherever they walk to. It reminds me of a scenario where in this country we have had citizens arresting police officers, you know, and we have also had a one-time former Deputy Chief Justice losing her job because of public, outplay and outlay. And so it is important that those who are serving in high-level institutions realize that when you are serving Kenyans, you are purely doing it because they've given you that opportunity and privilege, and that it is a privilege that you really carry almost everywhere, and that there is going to be a time when it stops. So the question is, when that time when you cease to be that officer comes to an end, what kind of image do you carry with yourself?
The headline on the front page of the People Daily reads, "Convict in Power." And he talks about the same issue. Judges decline to suspend Masengeli jail sentence, even as he continues to enjoy the company of top state officials and attending government functions. And he's seen there in a picture with none other than the president, William Ruto.
Hey there, friends. Welcome to Kids on the Block, where fun and imagination come alive. We dive into magical world filled with exciting adventures and awesome friends.
What position were you in?
I was number 2.
What position were you?
Number 1.
He decided to cross the bridge by his house and look for food on the other side.
We're going to do half cup of chocolate chips, and the other one, we're going to do half cup of the blueberries.
So, grab your imagination hats and get ready to explore with us. Join us every Saturday at 9 a.m. for new friends, amazing stories, and tons of laughter.
Join us as we explore the journeys of those who defy the odds and break barriers. We dive deep into the stories of triumph.
Sometimes when parenting a child with a special need or whatever disability, family life becomes a bit complicated and you may end up raising the child on your own.
Here, we inspire.
I have a farm which one we showcase with other dyslexic youths and autism how to farm.
Motivate.
It's never easy, but what we do, the best thing is to work with another parent who has an elder child than yours.
And break through the barriers one story at a time. Push your boundaries beyond the limit. Saturdays at 8 p.m. The Grind, where business meets brilliance. It's not just about the ideas.
I was working as a shampoo boy. I used to wash clients' hair on the sink.
It's about making them happen. From big wins.
In primary school, when we would be asked what people want to be, I was categorical that I want to be a nurse.
To hard lessons.
The consoles change, the gaming equipment keep changing.
We cover it all. Tune in to The Grind, where every episode is packed with insights.
The person who is serving customers, always be a customer-centric.
Strategies.
When you pay attention to detail, you get luxury items.
And stories to fuel your ambition. Don't just dream it, grind it. Mondays at 7:30 p.m.
Jiunge nasi tunapoangazia safari za viongozi bora. Kutoka kwa ushindi mkubwa hadi masomo magumu.
Wakati wetu kwamba wasichana si wa kusoma, ni wa kuolewa, ng'ombe ipatikane, wazazi wakuwe watajiri.
Tunashughulikia yote.
I wish I were a better investor.
My parents taught me how to look for things for myself.
Tazama Mfahamu Kiongozi, ambapo kila kipindi kimejaa maarifa, mikakati na hadithi za kukuza azma yako.
For me to succeed, I have to fight.
Kila Alhamisi saa 1:30.
Tragic fire incidents in our institution. Who will end this mess and bring sanity to our schools? It is there also on the front page of the People Daily. They talk about learning paralyzed as lecturers begin strike. And Ogamba, that's a CS for Education, under fire of a funding model. Now, juxtapose that with this headline on the front page of the Business Daily. 96 billion shillings SACCO loans reveal parents' school fees burden. So yes, many people are taking loans from SACCOs to do a few things. Among them, buy land, buy property, but a huge chunk of this goes towards paying school fees. So yes, parents are spending a lot to just put their children in schools, but the sector is in crisis. Just before the break, we were here with Kevin Osido, Executive Director, Governance Watch, and Jude Njomo, former MP, Kiambu Town. Now joining the panel, Wilson Sosion, former SG KNUT and a former MP, and also an enthusiast in matters education, also a teacher. Bona Sosion, when you look at dailies like this, matters education everywhere, and they're just talking about turmoil, crisis, what does that make you feel?
Well, it doesn't surprise me because this we predicted way back during the chaotic Jubilee administration. Njomo here knows, and he was my good guest in many of the NAT meetings. We predicted the granting of the halt to our education system with the CBC that was not professionally conceived. All education models, all curricula must be processed professionally. They should not be processed politically, the way this one was done, dictated. You know, even when you are terminating a curriculum, you do what you call a summative evaluation of that curriculum professionally and share with the public. Like the 844, we should have told Kenyans why then we must migrate out of the 844. And then process a new curriculum through requisite professional steps from carrying out what we call a needs assessment, that is step one, and then number two, developing policy, that is where legislation needed to be done in Parliament. Everybody debates, the country debates. And then number three, develop what you call curriculum designs. After developing curriculum designs, develop teaching and learning material, test them, do the piloting, and then you have the piloting report, then begin the rollout, and then now you have a monitoring and evaluation framework. And monitoring evaluation framework is done by a robust quality assurance and standards unit at the Ministry of Education. But you see, in the Basic Education Act, that provision to establish Quality Assurance and Standards Council is provided in Article 64 of the Basic Education Act, but it has never been established. So for me, I wonder who really is evaluating the rollout of this new curriculum. So we've had for a long time an education system that is on autopilot, an education system that is invested by cartels and business interest, courtesy of the political ecosystem of the past Jubilee administration. And to fix it now is not going to be easy. So what the current administration is doing is trying to fix the mess that existed in the past. How did we arrive where we are with the universities collapsing without funding? This was watched over the last 10 years. And just to summarize, the status of education is what we call the Global Competitiveness Index measures undertaken by UN. Before the last 12 years or so, we were #1 in Africa in that index. In terms of delivery of quality education, no country could match Kenya in Africa. We were #1. In terms of access, we were also #1. But before we brought in these confused, unstructured, and ragtag dictated reforms ranging from curriculum to many things to stopping even self-sponsored programs in the university. Why do you stop Kenyans who are willing to pay, who are not admitted through the normal program, to join the university? And because the policy of Kibaki, if we get down to the master plan of Mwai Kibaki's administration, which was born out of political negotiations with teachers, was that one, free education in primary. which was started. 2, affordable secondary education. 3, expanded access to tertiary education. And the projection was that by 2015, we should have had 15% transition to universities. But when the Jubilee administration came and the rogue ministers at Uhuru left them to do things in a roller coaster way.
So basically,
Matiang'i, because he had war with
blame everything on the Jubilee administration.
Yes, we lost it. We got derailed at the point of Jubilee administration. Everything was working out well during the Kibaki era. The focus to have universities, at least a university in every county, well financed, well structured, and improve the transition from basic education to university at least by 15%. We should be doing 30% now. That means those sponsored by government. In fact, when I look at banding, those all government-sponsored students should not go beyond band 3, and you should have majority in band 1 if we worked right.
I want to see if the rest of the panelists agree with that assessment that all this is about Jubilee, because that's a different angle.
We came up with bad policies which don't work
during the Jubilee administration.
Reduced the funding which didn't work, and did not allow professional conversation in the sector.
There's a lot that has happened over the past 2 years.
We are trying to fix right now a mess of...
William Ruto has been in power for the last 2 years, Bonosido.
Yes.
In fact, this week we're just looking at his scorecard in so many different areas. Education is one of them.
Sure.
And these are the kind of headlines we're seeing. The new university funding model, for example, is President William Ruto's plan. President William Ruto also, immediately after becoming president, constituted a task force on education reform. It's called the Presidential Working Party on Education Reforms, which should have led us, if at all we were in crisis, to a different destination. How come these are the headlines, the kind of headlines we are seeing this time, yet Bwana Sosion would want us to believe that all this should just be taken back to the Jubilee administration?
Bwana Sosion can competently evaluate the Jubilee administration, because that is the point at which he was NAT Secretary General, and at some point I think he also became a chairman of NAT, and even served as a nominated member of Parliament, National Assembly, through the ODM party, and I think he sat also in the Education Committee of Bunge. But to lump all these issues on the Jubilee administration, I don't think would be fair to that administration.
It's being factual.
Because why I say this is because neither the president nor the cabinet secretary of education or the entire ministry work in isolation. There are partners, there are other stakeholders that are part and parcel of the ongoing conversations. And so to that extent, I believe that the Jubilee administration did very well to be able to open up spaces of engagement. I remember attending a number of meetings, both at Jogo House and also at KICC, when conversations on very many education reform issues were ongoing during the Jubilee administration. And stakeholders came and spoke their hearts and they spoke their minds. Fred, what is ailing us in this country is a goodwill to take in what Kenyans feel. And these Kenyans are represented by stakeholders and partners beyond government, both at the ministerial level and also at the presidential level. And so to the extent that we fail to take in what people feel and consume them and organize them in terms of a package that government can use to implement, I think that is where really the concerns are. Because when stakeholders sit, issues around the cartels never show up. Very few people speak about corruption in the education sector. In fact, most of these meetings are never even attended by the cabinet secretaries. The highest you can get is a principal secretary or a director. But you see now, when the implementation form gets into the play, it is the cabinet secretary that is expected to be standing at the front of everyone. Now, it is therefore important that government officials, particularly the cabinet secretaries, come out. And I was a little bit perturbed. I was watching at some Senate conversations yesterday when they expected the CS for Treasury, Bwana Mbadi, to appear before them And as at the time they were waiting for the CS, he sent a letter. And some senators were really left quite disturbed that they came in to ask concerns around appropriation for counties, issues around the taxation policies, and then the cabinet secretary does not show up. It is important that CSS realize that they are serving on the behest of Kenyans and that Kenyans have trusted them with the responsibilities. And so that when you are the cabinet secretary for education and you are being vetted, it is not that you are coming from heaven, because none of these CSS come from heaven, including the one that is serving right now. As at the point in time when he received the phone call and he was told, His Excellency the President wants to recommend your name to Parliament, what kind of research do you do? Who do you call? Who do you sit with as you prepare your conversation? So all these concerns on the front pages of our newspapers today really are not a shocker, but it really presents a mechanism of lack of responsibility and inability of some of the people who sit at the apex of our institutions to engage. And finally, Fred, as you talk about the Presidential Working Party, it is even much more disturbing that the President has appointed other committees, 129 members, really. And the President William Ruto is known to have been a very good brainer, you know, from the point at which he was even a minister for education to his political history and management really spur and encourage many Kenyans. But how come at the point of veto kwa ground, when you expect that we want to see what the president is thinking, where the rubber is meeting the road, we don't see anything.
All right. And June Jomo, it may be correct that various administrations have different approaches to matters education, but it is such a key sector that if left to the whims of any administration led by, of course, politicians, it could leave the country at a loss. Here, the Daily Nation seems to suggest that parents are looking at this as a loss, playing with our children's future. Matters education, should they be ring-fenced to ensure that they are not prone to undue influence by politicians, including the head of state? Because the tendency to go extreme in as far as reforms every time there's a new administration probably is the issue we are facing today.
I think you cannot separate education from politics, because education is supposed to provide the citizens with the ability to support our economy. When the Mzungu came, he wanted people to work at his chambers, at his offices, you know, to serve him. So he brought in a system of education which develops people who can serve and be obedient to them. Therefore, when the Mzungu went and we had our own government, the government had to come with a system of education that will produce people who are going to serve their country according to the requirements that were then there. So that is why the education system have gone on changing. The 844 system survived for so long, and then time came for it to change. I remember when they were bringing in the CBC, we had students who were qualifying and getting degrees, but when they go to the office, they cannot perform. So they wanted a system where people are practical, where people are able to produce, where people who don't, if they don't get employment, they'll be able to start their own businesses, they'll be able to start their own industry. And that is why they were changing the form of education. So education is dynamic. It will never be static. I don't want to go into details. Mwalimu, you know, he's been in that field for quite some time. That is why he's going into those technical details. But the most important thing is, who is being produced by this education system? Is it somebody who is going to be able to stand on his own feet? Is it going to be somebody, even if he doesn't get employed, he's going to start his own business? That is the kind of person that we want from this education system. But what I am very, very concerned about this education is this funding model in the university. First, let me address the issue where Honorable Sossion said about the government banned private students from the universities. I also don't really agree that should have been banned. Maybe they would have looked for a way of controlling. Because if you remember, the universities had so many private students that it's like they were concentrating only on the private students at the detriment of those who have gone in through the normal system. And that was the issue that the government was trying to address. That the ones who have, you know, there were students who could come in privately. Maybe they have not qualified to do certain courses, but because they are able to pay, then they are able to do those courses, which means you could get, if you are rich enough and you did not qualify to become a doctor, then you go and you'll be allowed to do medicine simply because you can afford. Those would have been the issues to address. I remember when I was in school back those years, even in secondary schools, we had two classes. One was called the government stream, and the other one, the Harambee stream. So the government stream is where you get a letter from the government, you are told, oh, you join these and these secondary schools. There are those who did not qualify. They would come and register themselves, and they are accepted in the school, but they pay a little bit more because they're in the Harambee class. But once, apart from the fees, we would mix in the same classes. You would not know the difference. And you would find that there are some who had not qualified when they joined Form 1, and then they'll top the class by the time they go to Form 4. And the system was working. So these private students in the universities, I think, should be reintroduced and be more controlled, because they also help a lot in funding the university. Okay. Lastly, on this system of funding, the HELB system, I totally disagree with the system that has been introduced, because it is just going to bring in corruption, nothing else. It is going to bring in discrimination. And I'm saying this because I come from Kiambu, and in many instances, wherever we are arguing about looking for resources for the constituencies, you'll hear people saying, oh, you come from a rich constituency. And that is exactly what is going to happen. People from those constituencies, which are perceived to be rich, will not be accessing this help. It will go only to certain region. Yet in our constituencies, we have very deserving people. We have people from very poor families who are performing very well, who need this kind of higher education. Okay. And they say, I want to remember that this has happened to us before, because there was a change of system of education, and they brought in, during the Moi era, they brought in what was called quota system of education, where our schools, we could only have a certain percentage of students could come from our area. The schools which we did Harambees and built, they were upgraded, and they became provincial schools, such that only about 20% of our students could access the school, and then 80% come from other areas. Okay. So what happened? Many of our students were not accessing secondary school. Okay. So if we allow another system to come in where our students will be discriminated, this will be double jeopardy for us.
But Asuncion, as an educationist, you've witnessed the kind of changes that education has gone through in Kenya, school administrations. During the Moi administration, that's when we got the 844 system. We got many schools for girls during that time, hence the Moi girls schools. Then Kibaki came with the free primary education.
Quite a number of
yes. Then Uhuru came, and now this. Is there a way to ensure that even though politicians may change, there are extremes at the education system, and the processes towards radical reforms can be tapered to ensure they are not too extreme going forward?
The foundation of any education system of a country is the political leadership of the day. That's the truth, and that's a fundamental fact. And if we study comparatively the education development and programs in this country, it is heavily determined by the political ecosystem. You look at Jomo Kenyatta era, you can see the programs that were undertaken in education, the focus, the reforms, the new education system within the country, the Ominde Commission of 1964, the session of paper of 1965, number 10, it was anchored within the same, and there are many changes that came up. When Moi came in, who was a practicing teacher, by all standards, a very professional one, we witnessed a lot of development within the education sector, building of new schools, building of new girls' schools, building of universities, building of teacher training colleges, and conforming with the international standards, and trying to bring in 844 with the second University of Science and Technology, that then the Kenyan education system should lead to graduates who are self-reliant, but not who are employed within government. That was the initial mission of the previous administration. But when you come to Kibaki, Kibaki did an analysis of the failures of the Moi administration, drop in enrollment, drop in funding of education, and of course the new global goals, EFA goals. And you see, let us not forget we had Vision 2030. So that then programs of Kibaki were anchored on Vision 2030. That by 2030 we should produce the most globally competitive human resource. And that is why you can see in Kibaki administration, one thing he did was to stabilize education. You don't disrupt with so many changes that are not even understood by those implementing programs. And what he did, he focused on the challenges. One, funding, bring all the children to school. Then there was gross enrollment, went up. That is why we now talk of the Gen Zs. The Gen Zs are products of Kibaki education system.
100% true.
Almost all of them came to school and they've transited up to tertiary education. And that's why we see them today is the most educated cohort of Kenyans. And then within the Kibaki of funding, Kibaki was able to see through what would happen to all these learners up to tertiary institution in terms of access. Kibaki worked on access and removing barriers. And that is why the free primary was escalated to affordable secondary education and then opening of universities and tertiary institutions. Then there was Douglas Odhiambo review of education in 2012 on how then to make the training and skills relevant to the market, which is what June Jomo was talking about. And let me aver here, in terms of curriculum as a professional, all curricula in any country must be reviewed every 5 years to make it relevant, because things change. And it must be reviewed in a professional manner, not political. That one I dare say. It must be reviewed in a professional manner. Things change.
You just said that education is a product of the political environment.
The fourth industrial revolution. Yes, even as you review politically, the political foundation is not political disruption. It is a foundation for professional work to be done. And that is where the goodwill comes in. Make the right legislation, that is political. Devote the funding, that is also very political. So then, if you look at the Kibaki era, education was extremely stable and the reforms were undertaken meticulously, and the outcomes within the EFA framework of 2000 to 2015 were actually well achieved. And with the Global Monitoring Report, Kenya was number 3 in implementing those global commitments in Africa. When it came to 2015 to 2030, which is now the SDG agenda, the political system, the approach by Jubilee was extremely disruptive. That's a fact. So many changes, and you are talking of reforms, very heavy reforms, which are not particularly disrupting the curriculum in a manner that was not very professional. Because to date, if you look at the debate that was in Parliament yesterday, MPs are still complaining seriously about the implementation of curriculum in the junior secondary. We are even prepared for a bigger challenge in the transition to senior secondary. Those are realities for the country. And that is now, we put a telescope seriously on the 10-year regime of Uhuru Kenyatta administration of Jubilee. Did it stabilize and add value to the programs of education from where Kibaki left? To me, I would say there were a lot of disruption. So that then we have William Ruto administration, and it is trying to stabilize. And the president said, and we caution the president, that whatever is being done in the education sector must be a product of robust public participation and engagement. That is why the Presidential Working Party was the first item of the administration to review many policies and also to make recommendations. So that right now, to me, Ruto administration can do justice to this country by ensuring that that Presidential Working Party report recommendations are implemented. And the funding model for universities is one of the recommendations of Presidential Working Party. The way it was implemented was wrong. And I think the gazettement of a new team to reprocess is the right remedy. There is nothing wrong with having another party to work on a specific item, because the funding of universities, if you look at it, that collapsed to the extent that right now the lecturers are on strike. Why? Can't pay salaries in full, you can't remit third-party deductions, and a lot of things have not been working quite right. It is a problem that has been exacerbated for the last number of years. And we told the president, the only thing you need to do, expand the funding. You expand the funding to the universities and develop a new model that is fair, equitable, and will allow the poor students to study fully without any interruption. So the reprocessing of the funding model should comply with Article 10 of the Constitution, public participation. Let the university students now give their views. Let the lecturers give their views. It was wrong to allow the vice chancellors to be the ones setting the cost of courses in the universities, to the extent that now the cost of education in public universities and courses is higher than in private universities. Which should not be the case. So to me, I would like all Kenyans to view this as an opportunity given to us, for all of us to run education and give our input. So this funding model, when the president gazettes a team, it is in keeping with the commitment of running education through robust public conversation. Even when you look at the striking groups, the teachers started the other way. The president engaged them very clearly, released the money to finance the CBA, released the money to convert the 46,000 teachers to PNP. So you can see the action line from the government is actually very positive. What the lecturers are raising has actually been caused largely by the poor funding of universities. It is something that is not going to go away within this financial year, because we are in the second cycle of implementing the funding model. And when it comes to full cycle, it will work. The only mess that was done is that somebody brought in a wrong mean testing instrument and to replace that one
it is
of
part
help,
of the problem, yes.
And that is a fact.
It is part of the problem.
Can't do that.
Education in crisis is the big headline on the front pages of the Daily Nation today. They say playing with our children's future. That's a big headline on the Daily Nation. Varsities in a fine mess on the Standard. Yet on the Business Daily, this education and school fees continues being the biggest burden for parents. 96 billion shillings SACCO loans reveal parents' school fees burden. School fees accounts for 21% of loans issued by SACCOs. That's the current situation of the education sector. I want us to move to politics now as we get to the very last stretch of the morning cafe this morning. And I'll draw your attention to the front page of the Star, if my director can put it up. And we do have what has been happening between the president and his deputy. Down there's a photo of the president with the elected members of parliament from Nyeri. We have all the MPs of Nyeri, including the senator, who had paid a courtesy call on the president very early yesterday morning. But conspicuously missing from that meeting was his deputy, Rigathi Gachagua. Now, the National Assembly returned back to work yesterday, the day before yesterday, from a month-long recess. As we continue looking at the 2 years of President William Ruto, we're also looking at the 2 years of this National Assembly and the Senate. And their conduct, too, has come under a lot of scrutiny. One of the things that was indicated in one of the dailies earlier this week was the fact that there could be the attempt or proposal to impeach the deputy president could make a comeback as early as next week in the National Assembly. That a motion has already been drafted. It's already within the halls of parliament, yet to be tabled, but it's already there. Now, we are seeing the president and the actions we saw at the weekend, the president traveling to Nyeri and having an empty seat right next to him. Meanwhile, his deputy was somewhere in Kirinyaga. And one wonders, it's only been 2 years. 3 more years before 2027. Bonosido, what is your assessment of this? Do you think the two of them can survive the next 3 years together?
Fred, ceteris paribus, what politics is in this country? The answer to that is a yes and also a no. And it is a yes because of what politics presents, particularly to politicians, and their attitude. And if the deputy president is still interested in following his ambition, because within certain circles they're saying that he's the king and is the one who determines who touches the mountain, and that he wants to spur up, particularly as a possible heir of His Excellency the President post-20 in the next election, and also indeed as the man to watch from Mount Kenya. So if he is interested in propping himself, profiling himself, and building himself as such a person, then the possibilities of them surviving the remaining term are very limited. And that is also based on really many, many things that we look at, politically speaking. What being a politician who ascends to the level of a president is in this country, including issues of money to campaign, the number of people that you can be able to, manage to be brought to your kitty to be declared as president, many, many things. Number two is that this is not new, and hence the answer being no. As you present, as we talk about the issues of the empty seats, it reminded me of a point in time at KICC when, in fact, not just at KICC, even at Kenya School of Government and in many, many other meetings, where President Uhuru Kenyatta used to sit with empty chairs when his deputy was expected. And so if they were able to survive, and for the president, for President Uhuru Kenyatta, it even began much more earlier because he served 10 years. So if they survived with all those concerns, it is therefore possible that President William Ruto and his deputy can also survive. And what really needs to beg the question is, what really is happening? What is this thing? Particularly borrowing from the kind of negotiations that we were told that Kenya Kwanza had with all its affiliate parties, to the level of even being able to, within a span of less than a month into his presidency, coiling and bringing in other smaller parties to join Kenya Kwanza. That opportunity to negotiate, that opportunity to dialogue, why is it missing, particularly when it comes to the president and his deputy? So the point of contentions really need to be concerns that the president and his deputy should be able to address. And this is not just about the two of them. It is important for them to realize that when you are a president, you are not just a president of those who voted for you. You're not just a president of your political parties. You are a president of every individual who is called a Kenyan, and even those who are in the diaspora.
Okay.
And so I think that there's a lot of time being wasted in managing these conflicts that should be put in effective service delivery to the citizens. As we've just been talking since the beginning of this segment, Fred, the president has a lot of issues that he needs to be addressing. And we expect that, as is given in the Constitution, the deputy president should be able to help assist the president in terms of engaging and managing all these concerns. So I think for me it is not fair, especially to Kenyans who expect really a lot more from the president, and also including the mouthpieces that are being sent to be able to spur this fire. But indeed this is happening in our country. It's not new again. We look forward to seeing how it plays and how it spans.
And it would appear that this conflict has drawn parliamentarians deep into it. And Parliament just returned from recess, a month-long recess. They have a very busy in-tray, streamlining CDF system, matters education, school fees is still a big problem. IEBC reconstitution is a big agenda for them. Financing the budget with the collapse of the Finance Bill 2023. They have a packed in-tray. Yet you can see that the entire last week, members of Parliament, even from the Mount Kenya region, were busy holding meetings in Nyahururu to make a declaration on who they support. Their colleagues from Mount Kenya East were also holding meetings to declare who they support. Now we are seeing leaders from Nyeri trooping to State House just because of this kind of rift. And then the proposal to introduce an impeachment motion in Parliament. And you wonder, are we being drawn into issues we should not be focusing on right now, especially for the National Assembly?
Fred, the drums of war have sounded, and they have sounded very loud. And like you have said, we've been expecting to hear that a motion of impeachment has been tabled in Parliament, because from the rumors that are going around, and like you have rightly said, it has already been drafted. If you remember well, the current deputy president during the campaign for 2022 elections was very, very strong supporter of UDA. And one of the main things, one of his main agendas was to point out the ills that the President Uhuru government had done. In fact, he was very blunt, very strong, and accused the president of so many things. And I think that is why he was very useful to the Kenya Kwanza campaign team. But when he was appointed the deputy president, yes, he continued for a few months, still accusing the previous administration. But then he changed his tune. He said he has consulted Wazes, and he apologized to Uhuru Kenyatta. And I think that is where his problem started. Because from then, he has not been in very good terms with the Kenya Kwanza administration. And secondly, if you remember when President Uhuru made a coalition with his then deputy, who is the current president, President Ruto, each one of them had a big following. Uhuru Kenyatta had a very big following in the Mount Kenya region and generally in the country. President Ruto had a very big following in Rift Valley and generally other sections of the country. So they brought in their following together so that they can win an election. Now, if you look at the coalition between President Ruto and his deputy Gachagua, President had his own following. Gachagua was relatively new in politics, and he had been a one-time member of parliament with quite a big following in the Nyeri area, but had not really penetrated any other region, even including the Mount Kenya region. So when he got the position of deputy president, he started now trying to put together a following within the Mount Kenya region. And I think this is what is being fought for. Yeah, so that he doesn't get that following as a region. And that is why we have now Mount Kenya East has declared that they want somebody else. Then we have the other 28 who they were claiming to
48.
be 48. I think they had forgotten how to count. They now want also to divide another region of Mount Kenya so that Mount Kenya will never be united, because Mount Kenya has a very heavy vote, such that if they went to one basket, that would be a great advantage. So I think what is happening now is to make sure that the Mount Kenya vote is divided. Mm-hmm. The Mount Kenya East will go one region, the Mount Kenya West will go to another region, and they don't want to allow the deputy president to have that vote consolidated, because it can become a very strong vote. However, like you have said, I think we are losing focus. This is the wrong time to be doing such politics in this country. Our economy is in ICU. We should be concentrating on doing things that are going to revive our economy, not just following. It's like elections are next week but one. The way we are behaving, our politicians are behaving. We have serious issues that require to be attended to, and stop those we stop that campaign mode.
Okay. Bona Sosion, of course, it is said that when you want to kill a dog, you first start by giving it a bad name. And what we've seen over the last few weeks definitely paints the Deputy President in not a very positive light in as far as his working relationship with the President. But when it comes to this impeachment motion, whether successful or not, it will have implications, especially on the working and the current administration. Do you feel that it is very necessary for members of parliament to engage in such
I think,
a venture?
Number one, we must get facts right first. What is the origin of all this conflict? Where did it start? And where will it end? Because it must end at some point. If you use it grows and it complicates itself. It will slope off to resolve itself. It started somewhere. And it begins in Mount Kenya and it ends in Mount Kenya. It has nothing to do with the president. The president has not made any statement about all this conflict. And I think the best statement that the president made last Sunday in Nyeri was that we are not going for, let's not talk about 2027. Let us deliver the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, which was a promise to Kenyans, which of course Njomo is talking about. What is urgent is the economy. These are the bit of politics. We'll always do politics at the ballot. There will always be a ballot box.
Yet a lot of the criticism against the Deputy President has happened right in front of the President.
Now, let me come to that. I'm coming to that. Because we must speak the truth as is. The issue that we are watching is the Deputy President having issues with his own members of parliament of Mount Kenya. Period. And you can go into that. And you can get back to the time when the running mate was, because this gave the president a hell of time. That's a fact. And there were many potential running mates from the mountain, ranging from Kimani Ichung'wah, a grounded politician, and Ndindi Nyoro, Ellis Wahome, Anne Waiguru, Kithure Kindiki, and at least at some point, Kithure Kindiki and Rigathi Gachagua were close contestants of the running mate. Now, Rigathi Gachagua is in office as the deputy president. It is no use engaging in an ugly war with the members from the mountain. And I think this is what has escalated. And the deputy president has been very bold in castigating the members of parliament from that particular region who don't toe his line. That's brand of politics. And I think it should also be borne in the mind of everyone that all these members of parliament are supporters of the president and the Kenya Kwanza administration. So trying to bring in other non-interest groups from outside the armpit of Kenya Kwanza administration within the mountain to escalate the conflict is wrong. So this conflict begins and ends at the mountain. And if there will be an impeachment motion, that impeachment motion will come from that end. And let me say something about impeachment. It was placed in our constitution. Anybody elected in the Republic of Kenya, this is a fact of law and a fact of the constitution. Anybody elected in the Republic of Kenya from president is impeachable. And we've seen these impeachments being done. And to me, I don't think impeachment is the right route. If Rigathi is the elder and the leader of the mountain that he is, he should be able to make peace and sit with the members of parliament from the mountain. When you see all the members of parliament of Mount Kenya East bolting out and declaring that Kithure Kindiki is their man, and then the 48 members from Mount Kenya West doing the same, then the question is, who is Rigiji working with the members of parliament? Let's call facts facts.
Okay.
Because President William Ruto is the president of the country, but at the end of the day, is from Rift Valley. I can imagine if the president is at war with members of parliament from Rift Valley, that will not be healthy. Okay. And it is not right to engage in this type of wars. One fact that Rigiji must accept, and I think this is where issues came about, the young members of parliament who are angling for leadership in the future and even being frankly ambitious in the presidency, which is okay. And the president has said, let us mentor young people. It happens in all institutions, even in political institutions. You should allow the young leaders to mentor themselves for leadership of tomorrow. So this business of even trying to bring in Uhuru Kenyatta to the mix, Uhuru Kenyatta is now a retired president. He's the elder statesman, and he's the only living former president of the Republic of Kenya. And I don't think it will be right to pull him to these little walls of the mountain. Okay. Let Rigathi Gachagua accept one fact. These young MPs who are ambitious should not be fought. They should be encouraged to prepare themselves for tomorrow. Okay. We will all leave, and the others will come in.
But Osido, do you agree?
Those are the basic things. So
do you agree
at the mountain, it ends at the mountain.
Yes, do you agree with that assessment? It's all about the mountain. The president has nothing to do with this.
If it does,
okay.
Let me just remind Sosion that history has a history of repeating itself. If you remember, during the Moi era, there was a vice president called Karanja. And Karanja was facing the same kind of situation that the current deputy president is facing. They said it's a Mount Kenya issue because the one who was attacking him was a gentleman called Kuria Kanyingi, who was very, very close to the president. The same script that was used during Karanja's time is the same script that is being used now. We will never see anybody else. People are just going to be made to fight each other from the same region. It will look like a regional issue, but this is national politics.
Okay, Bonosido.
Precisely, and I agree with the aspect of national politics, because it cannot be true that the president goes to Western and Nyanza and is very actively involved in politics towards 2027. And when he goes back to Mount Kenya, he tells them, it's not yet time for us to politic, you know, that we are not having elections tomorrow, which is also true. This issue is President William Ruto's issue, and it is not just about Mount Kenya. What we are seeing happening is a divide and rule mechanism. And Fred, we can go into the details of really what is the core. But the issue is the urgency of service delivery. The president has a plan which is seemingly not being effective, and as we do the audit 2 years down the line, many issues that are coming up. It is important that President William Ruto really reins in on his members, including the members of parliament, who are more or less coming up as the mouthpieces to breed this conflict and the antagonism that we see between the president and his deputy. The two of them can sit in a room and agree on how to move forward. Even despite the conflicts that they have, Kenya has to be put at the forefront of all these concerns. And as we said, this is not new. If he was able to contain President Uhuru Kenyatta for all those years, how about getting back to imagining that he is Rigiji during President Uhuru Kenyatta's time? So I think for me, this is delay tactics on some of the things that are not working well for Kenya Kwanza government, and that politics is being used as propaganda, particularly the space of conflict between the president and his deputy. President William Ruto has an agenda, which in fact, as per the constitution, the role of his deputy is almost very minimal in that agenda. It's purely to assist based on what the Constitution says. And so we are asking the president to take leadership and really deliver on the aspirations of Kenyans. He is the one who will go back to the people and say, tulifanya, ama hatukufanya.
Your parting shot.
Mine.
Yes.
My parting shot is again to continue asking Kenyans to be vigilant. We see a lot of things not going on in our country, both at national and county levels. Because our business every day is county governments, we ask the national government to send money to counties. It cannot be true that 6 months down the line, we have not seen resources being sent to counties. Indeed, that is a clear indication that we are not seeking to see services being delivered. And citizens, let's continue with our agency to ensure that the governments in both national and counties are held accountable, and that the aspirations of the Constitution that is now 14 years down the line are actually lived and that we reap from those fruits.
Okay, thank you so much, Bwana Osido. Bwana Sosion, your final remarks.
Yeah, I think number one, the president is focused on bottom-up economic transformation agenda and delivery. And it is wrong to say the president has issues with the deputy. No. And I think facts are out clear. It is a deputy president who has issues with the MPs from Mount Kenya. So it begins there and it ends there. And if it does get to an extent of dragging the whole country or dragging the parliament to it, then nature will take its own course in terms of political products of the process. But what is important is that the bottom-up economic transformation agenda which the president committed to Kenyans has to be delivered, one way or the other, with or without all these political conflicts and processes. And no one is a sacred cow in the whole of this process. The most important people are the people of Kenya, and not just a segment of the people of Kenya, it is all Kenyans. And when the president reaches out to the people of Nyanza, who largely did not vote for him, and promises them political accommodation going into the future, it's a good thing. It's a fundamental philosophy of uniting the country and expanding the agenda and opportunities envisioned in the bottom-up economic transformation agenda. So I think all is well and all is right. And nobody should fear any political process, including impeachment.
So uniting from Nyanza, but dividing from Mount Kenya.
But wrap it up for us.
I don't think the president has divided the mountain.
Okay.
The president is
Thank you so much.
Asante. The mountain.
I want to congratulate the Inspector General elect for his him being successfully vetted by Parliament, and I want to challenge him that he can make a difference as a new Inspector General to clean up the police service and to make police service a service to the people. Let him make the police, make us trust the police and believe in them that they can be able to assist us. Two, I hope that the task force that has been appointed by the president, although to me it sounds like it is too big, because I would expect a task force for about 10, 20 people. These are over 100. I hope it is going to work. And tell them we are laying our children in their hands. Let them come up with a solution to our education system. We are tired of fires. Why is it that schools have started burning? Is it like a season of fire, like the way it happens in Australia, that we know during the dry period there is going to be fire? How comes every now and then we have fires in schools, then they die? We should get a permanent solution to this. We should have a regular system where our schools are inspected to make sure that all the safety standards are maintained. And I want to say that we can have an education system which can help our children to be self-sufficient when they are out of school.
Thank you so much, Jude Njomo, former MP Kiambu Town, Bwana Wilson Sosion, a former SG KNUT, and also a former Member of Parliament, and Kevin Osido, Executive Director, County Watch, our panelists this morning on State of the Nation. Indeed, education dominates most of the headlines, and they talk about education in crisis, playing with our children's future on the Daily Nation, varsities in a fine mess, but on the Business Daily, 96 billion shillings SACCO loans reveal parents' school fees burden. So this is where you're putting all your money for the sake of our children, but the sector is in crisis. It continues being the biggest discussion into the week. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time at TV47 and for your very well-considered opinions on the issues we've discussed. After the break, we'll be having the Principal Secretary for Culture